Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Following the discovery of a warrant from 70 years ago, a grand jury declines to indict Carolyn Bryant Donham, the woman whose accusations led to the lynching of Emmett Till. And the death of NBA great Kobe Bryant making headlines once again, as the lawsuit his wife filed against Los Angeles County heads to trial. Plus,
this case is not resolved until we have a successful prosecution and people are held accountable.
An arrest is made after 4 Muslim men were murdered over the last 9 months in New Mexico. But first,
Kiely, we love you, and if you see this, please just come home.
the search intensifies for missing California teenager Kiely Rodni. Law&Crime Daily, covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everybody to Law&Crime Daily. I'm your host, Mike Sachs. Family and friends of a missing California teenager are pleading for her safe return. Kiely Rodni hasn't been seen by her family or friends since last weekend. Law&Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with more on the case and the search for the missing teen. Anjanette?
Well, Mike, Kiely Rodni was last seen over the weekend. It was actually early Saturday morning at a campground in Northern California. A spokesperson for the Placer County Sheriff's Office tells me that Marine units are searching a body of water nearby, and there are divers on standby. It's not clear whether they've entered the water just yet. Now, we want to show you a photo of Kiely Rodni. Sheriff's officials say she and her silver Honda CR-V have been missing since last weekend, and there's been no activity on her cell phone. Kiely is only 16 and had attended a party at the campground with 100 people before she went missing. Before that, a surveillance camera captured video of her at a truck stop. Her mother has begged for anyone to come forward with information about Kiely's whereabouts.
We just want her home. We're so scared, and we miss her so much, and we love her so much. And Kiely, we love you, and if you see this, please just come home. I want nothing more than to hug you. And if anybody else out there, if you know where she is, if you know anything about where she might be, if you have any ideas or thoughts, please come forward and share them. And we're not looking to bust anybody else or get anybody in trouble. We just want to see our daughter home.
Now, anyone with information about Kiely's disappearance is asked to call the Placer County Sheriff's Office. That number is on your screen. It's area code 530-886-5375, and there's actually a $50,000 reward being made available to anyone who has information that leads to Kiely's recovery. Mike?
Thanks, Anjanette. Now joining me today are Law&Crime analyst Julie Rendelman, former SWAT member Lisa Lockwood, and Law&Crime's Anjanette Levy. Now first off, Julie, a spokesperson with the Sheriff's Office told a group of teens who attended the party, quote, "We're not investigating you, we're partnering with you to obtain any information regarding Kiely." Now does that mean that they don't have to lawyer up or aren't facing any criminal liability? Break that down for us, please.
So unfortunately it doesn't. And, it's very hard. I'm a criminal defense attorney. So naturally, my inclination is to tell every single kid that was there to have a lawyer, because they may say something innocuous and that could be taken in a way to indicate that something happened that didn't. The problem is it's imperative for these kids to provide information if they have information. And so it's really difficult to balance, especially if you're one of the parents of one of these kids that may have information. So a lot of times they may hire an attorney, and perhaps that attorney can provide some information and in certain ways be a shield between the individuals and law enforcement to give them the information they need, but to protect the children that may have seen or know something.
Yeah, Julian, this is certainly still a developing story with information still coming in. And Jeanette, is there any information about Kiely that could help people locate her?
Well, Mike, she is 5 feet 7 inches tall. She weighs 118 pounds. And we want to tell you that she has blonde hair and hazel eyes, just in case you weren't able to tell her eye color by looking at the photos. She also has a tattoo of the number 17 on her ribs, and she has a nose ring and several other piercings. So these are things that people could be looking out for, particularly if you saw her at a campground or something, maybe in a swimsuit. You just never know, with that tattoo on her ribs that has the number 17. So obviously her family is distraught and looking to find her, hopefully, we all hope, alive.
Yeah, and Jeanette, thank you very much for that. I'm still curious about what's happening here. in Placer County. Is there any question of foul play? Is there any information we're getting that could lead to knowing where she might be? I mean, we've already detailed all the things that might be available, but what do we expect to come out in the coming days? I mean, have you heard anything more about this, Anjanette?
Yeah, not really, Mike. I mean, they're searching that body of water right now by the campground. And so they're probably just trying to rule that out, or possibly searching to see if her vehicle might be in there. Keep in mind, as we told you, her vehicle is missing. So that is a key piece. If they find Kiely, hopefully they find her vehicle. So they're probably just trying to rule this out. We'll just have to wait and see what comes of the investigation as it moves forward. You've got to think they are pinging her cell phone to determine just exactly where she was when that phone signal went off on Saturday.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And let's move on to another story here. Attorneys for a former South Carolina attorney and accused killer Alex Murdaugh are asking the judge to delay a lawsuit until after he stands trial for the murders of his wife and son. Now, Murdaugh was charged in the 2021 shooting of his wife and the death of his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul, last month, and that was a year after their deaths. Now, this is just the latest charge in a string of alleged crimes the former Low Country attorney is charged with. Murdaugh faces dozens of charges relating to alleged financial crimes, accused of swindling millions of dollars from former clients and being part of an alleged insurance fraud scheme in which police say he hired someone to kill him to get a life insurance payout for his surviving son, Buster, after the deaths of Maggie and Paul. Now, he's also charged with stealing millions from a settlement intended for the children of his former housekeeper who died at the family's home 4 years ago. Investigators also say Murdaugh and his alleged drug dealer conspired to buy and sell oxycodone for almost a decade. The lawsuit Murdaugh is now seeking to delay stems from a 2019 boating accident in which his son's friend Mallory Beach died while Paul was underage and drinking alcohol and driving a boat owned by Murdaugh. Now, the Beach family alleges Murdaugh is liable for her death. Murdaugh's attorneys want a judge to continue the case and temporarily block discovery of evidence until after he stands trial for murder. Now, his murder trial is set to be held in January. And in California, Law&Crime will be live inside the courtroom for the final hearing for Scott Peterson before a judge determines if the convicted killer should get a new trial. News of Peterson's arrest in the 2002 killing of his wife Lacey and their unborn son Connor swept the nation after their bodies were found in the San Francisco Bay months after going missing. Now, he was convicted and initially sentenced to death. Then, 2 years ago, the California Supreme Court overturned the death sentence. Peterson's attorneys are demanding a new trial, alleging a juror lied to get onto the jury in 2004. Peterson is scheduled back in court Thursday ahead of the judge's decision of whether he will be retried. Tune into Law and Crime Network for the live coverage. Now, still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the death of NBA great Kobe Bryant back in the spotlight as his wife takes her lawsuit against Los Angeles County to court. But first, with the help of the community tips, New Mexico police make an arrest in the murders of 4 men killed over the last 9 months. Welcome back. Police are searching for a motive after a man allegedly murdered several Muslim men in New Mexico. Tips from the community helped officials bring in Mohammed Saeed in connection to the deaths of 4 Muslim men in Albuquerque. Investigators were able to track down the Volkswagen sedan allegedly driven by the suspect in the most recent murder, that of Naeem Hussein, a 25-year-old who was found shot to death on Friday. Mohammed Afzal Hussein was found fatally shot August 1st, and Aftab Hussein was killed days earlier on July 26th. Now, the first murder happened back in November last year when police say Mohammed Ahmadi was killed outside a business he ran with his brother. Saeed has been charged with murder in the deaths of 2 of the men, and police say they're working on potential charges for the murders of the other 2. Officials held a press conference announcing the arrest and reassuring the Muslim community they will be watched over closely to make sure everyone feels safe.
To the Muslim community, a big thank you. You put faith in us. You trusted us, you passed information on to us that was crucial, and that led for us to being able to make an arrest in this case. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done. There's still a lot of evidence that needs to be verified, and I think that it's important that we continue to move in that direction so that we could build a solid case for our district attorney's office and the U.S. Attorney's office to continue to move this case forward so that we have a successful prosecution. The Albuquerque Police Department will continue to be visible in the Muslim community in the days to come and throughout the weeks to ensure that they feel safe and that they have time to come back to a normal life and ensure that they feel safety. So our officers from the Albuquerque Police Department, New Mexico State Police will continue to be visible within the community and to make sure that everybody feels safe.
Now, Julie, will this stay a state and local case, or may there be federal charges here? Could there be federal hate crime charges in Saeed's future?
So it's a bit too early to tell. We know, at least we've heard, that it sounds like he knew at least 2 of the victims. It's possible he knew all 4. And the question really, when it comes to whether it could be a federal hate crime, is can you prove that the motive was based on hate, based on some ethnicity he didn't like or something like that? And so I think it's a little too early to tell. I think there's a whole lot of investigation that still has to go into it. And keep in mind, they're still working on the other 2 cases because they have not been able to, at least we don't know, but so far we haven't heard anything about him being linked to the other 2 murders of these 2 other men. So I think time will tell.
And Lisa Lockwood, thanks for joining. Do you think at this point law enforcement's trying to obtain some confession from the suspect? And what else is happening perhaps behind the scenes?
Yeah, right initially, if he had not lawyered up before the police had taken him into custody when they found him in his vehicle, yes, that would be the goal of this. But the other evidence that's going to be important is tying him to the other murders that happened in November and then soon after that. And what do? They start looking at forensic data. They look for his cell phone. They do tracers to find out if it was hitting off cell towers. They're going to look at the gun that was used. They seized his guns from his vehicle and his home during the search warrant, and looking at shell casings. So it's a matter of going through all of that evidence to link him. The fact that they've got him linked to these 2 cases right now is incredible. He's in custody, he's off the street, and now police need to continue with their work to link him to the other 2 murders.
And they sure will. Now, coming up on Law and Crime Daily, the civil lawsuit brought about by Kobe Bryant's wife, Vanessa, begins jury selection in Los Angeles. Plus, a Mississippi grand jury makes a decision whether to charge a woman in the nearly 70-year-old case of Emmett Till's murder. Welcome back. Jury selection began Wednesday in downtown Los Angeles in the trial of Vanessa Bryant's lawsuit against the county following the death of her husband, NBA star Kobe Bryant. Bryant followed the lawsuit over graphic photos taken by first responders at the scene of the January 2020 helicopter crash which killed the basketball star, their 13-year-old daughter Gianna, and 7 others. At least 8 LA County deputies were accused of taking or sharing graphic photos after the helicopter plunged into a hillside. Bryant is suing for invasion of privacy, arguing their family suffered emotional distress after the photos were allegedly passed around. Bryant's attorneys say photos of Gianna and Kobe's remains were shared on at least 28 devices and by at least a dozen firefighters. The trial of Bryant's lawsuit and that of Orange County financial advisor Chris Chester were consolidated by a judge because he was making many of the same allegations. Now, Chester's wife and daughter were also killed in the crash. Ultimately, 6 jurors will decide both cases. Now, Lisa, no doubt sharing photos of a crime scene is in poor taste. Now, could any of these first responders face criminal charges, or is this lawsuit as far as it can go legally in the civil realm?
Well, we're in the civil court because it cannot be filed criminally, because it has to meet a parameter. With police and emergency personnel, there is something called misconduct. And does it breach the trust in their misconduct? Anything that a layperson can be charged with, a police officer and firefighter can be charged with. And a lot of things that fall under police misconduct are things like fraud or torturing a prisoner or sexual assault of somebody else. The fact that they did not share this publicly in a forum where it can be seen and preserved into perpetuity helps these officers who made a terrible, terrible error in their judgment.
Now, Julie, several other families in this case settled with the county. Vanessa Bryant did not. And people have called this lawsuit a money grab. Now, why did she take this to trial instead of settling outside of court?
So, Mike, I hate hearing the word money grab. Vanessa Bryant does not need anyone's money. This is about the fact that, her family had some right to privacy. And I think, there have been allegations prior to this about the sharing of photos of other individuals. And so I think she's out there making a statement. And that statement is that this is not acceptable. and that this shouldn't be tolerated. I think there's no question that anyone who looks at that, if it's true, would recognize that you cannot share photos of a deceased individual at a bar or with friends. That is not the way it works. And so I think she is making a statement for anyone to make sure that this does not happen again. And she's the perfect spokesperson for it.
Yeah, and often celebrities are at the forefront of the right to privacy issues in cases that go through our courts and end up in law school casebooks. Now, one thing that she also might keep in mind, and she might be trying to prove, is that these photos shocked the conscience and caused intense emotional distress, and of course it'll be up for a jury to decide. Now, also in celebrity news, New Mexico's Environment Department files a complaint for alleged safety violations following the fatal shooting on the set of Alec Baldwin's movie, Rust. Now, the department investigated the October shooting in which Alec Baldwin was shooting a prop gun during a rehearsal. The gun had live ammunition that killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins and wounded the film's director, Joel Souza. The Environment Department concluded Rust Movie Productions LLC was not following national gun safety standards on set, and the company was issued a citation including a more than $136,000 fine. Now, since the state could not settle with the production company, a complaint was filed against them through the Occupational Health and Safety Review Commission to hold Rust Movie Productions accountable for the workplace fatality. The company now has 2 weeks to respond. Then a hearing will be scheduled. No charges have been filed in the fatal shooting. Now, when we come back, the historic 70-year-old case of Emmett Till making headlines once again after a woman whose accusations led to his lynching will not be charged. Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. Now, a jury has been selected and opening statements are presented in the resentencing trial of Jason Wheeler, a Florida man convicted more than a decade ago in the shooting death of a Lake County deputy. Wheeler was convicted in 2006 of first-degree murder of a law enforcement officer using a firearm, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 2 counts of aggravated battery, a year after he shot and killed Wayne Coaster and injured 2 other deputies during an apparent ambush. Deputies Coaster, Bill Crotty, and Thomas McCain II responded to a neighborhood call after a domestic violence complaint from Wheeler's then-girlfriend. When deputies arrived, they were ambushed. Coaster was shot in the head at close range, and the 2 other deputies were also shot. After a massive manhunt, Wheeler was involved in a second shootout with law enforcement in which Wheeler himself was paralyzed. He was ultimately sentenced to death. Now, years later, courts determined non-unanimous jury recommendations for the death penalty violate Florida's state constitution. The Florida Supreme Court has since reversed that ruling, but Wheeler still must be resentenced, either receiving the death penalty or life in prison. And switching now to a case from nearly 70 years ago, that of Emmett Till. A Mississippi grand jury declines to indict the woman whose accusations led to his murder. 14-year-old Till was abducted and tortured and lynched back in 1955 after being accused of flirting with Carolyn Bryant, a white woman, at her family's grocery store. 2 men, Bryant's husband and his brother, abducted Till, beat him, and shot him in the head before dumping his body in the Tallahatchie River. 3 days later, his body was found. The 2 men were arrested but were ultimately acquitted by an all-white jury. Later, they admitted publicly to his killing, but were protected by double jeopardy. Now, after hearing 7 hours of testimony, a grand jury determined there was insufficient evidence to indict Bryant on charges of kidnapping and manslaughter. Now, this comes after family members of Till unearthed an unserved arrest warrant for Bryant, her late husband, and his brother, which is dated August 29, 1955, a day after Till was brutally murdered. Now, Lisa, are there any further investigative steps to take at this point, or is this now a closed case?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, whether or not they can move forward with anything else because of double jeopardy in that particular case. But the accuser, that's where the issue came. They brought evidence and didn't have enough evidence to prove that she was assaulted in any way. You have information that he whistled at her, and then other information saying that he actually groped her. We don't know. It's so many years. We've got 7 decades behind us. And with these people who admitted to the killing later, who were charged and let go and found not guilty by an all-white jury, I mean, we weren't getting the justice that we're seeing today. So it's all very, very unfortunate.
Yeah, this is a pure Southern lynching that we saw then in 1955, in which justice has been attempted to be gained ever since for Emmett Till. Now, Julie, why did the grand jury not come back with an indictment here saying there was insufficient evidence?
So obviously, we never know exactly what they were thinking. It's a secret proceeding. We know this is the second time they've attempted to go into the grand jury and they haven't been successful. And look, the main thing is what Lisa talks about. It's decades upon decades, and so memories fade. Over time, we know that in many of the cases we're looking at today. And so it's hard enough if a case happened yesterday, let alone dealing with the case from so many years ago. And keep in mind also, there was limited evidence in regards to her actual involvement in the murder. We knew she was related somehow. We just didn't know exactly how. And so that's another problem. There's no witnesses that actually established she participated in regards to that. And so I think they did an incredible job, the prosecutors, in trying to bring this case and bring some justice to the family. But unfortunately, they were unsuccessful.
Yeah, and this case was unearthed, I think, by pretty good journalism. Someone finding the old indictments and then also digging up this notion that perhaps what was accused never happened, which was largely suspected anyway, given the circumstances socially and civilly at the time. But this is perhaps the end of a chapter, of a really dark chapter in the civil rights era. Anyway, Lisa, Julie, thank you very much for joining us here, and everyone watching also, thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We will see you next time as we discuss justice in America. Thank you for watching.